In late 2018, a multinational consortium of top-tier geneticists from Singapore to Stockholm pulled off a massive study that lasted 6 long years. They collected blood and tissue samples from 48,000 people from every corner of the planet to measure exactly how humans age at the cellular level. The scientists expected the human aging clock to run at the same speed for everyone, regardless of their heritage. They predicted that diet and healthcare would explain any minor differences, but the actual data delivered a knockout blow to everything the academic establishment holds dear today. The results were not just minor variations, because the aging process is radically different depending on your ancestral lineage and your deep geographic roots. Certain populations are systematically aging significantly slower than the global average because their internal biological architecture is built entirely differently than the rest. The slowest aging populations are concentrated deep in East and Central Asia, in a pattern that standard biology models simply cannot explain away. This is not a measurement error or a trick of the environment, because it is literally written into their unique genetic and regulatory architecture. When the consortium finished the project in 2019, they were terrified of the implications of their own data during the long peer review process. By the time they published the final paper in 2020, they had buried the most explosive findings deep inside the supplementary materials section. The establishment is so afraid of these results that they scrubbed the discussion to avoid drawing the obvious conclusion that genetic ancestry dictates aging. The data is publicly available for any researcher with the guts to look at it, but it has never been assembled for the public. The modern field of population genetics is built on a post-war commitment to the idea that human genetic differences are only superficial and recent. They are terrified of admitting to substantial inherited biological differences would validate the discarded racial sciences of the 20th century at any cost. This political commitment to equality has created a professional environment where reporting the truth about genetic divergence is a career-ending move for researchers. The specialists know the picture is complex, but they continue to push a simplified narrative of uniformity for the general public audience. The first major finding from this study proved that telomere shortening rates are not uniform across the different human populations on this Earth. The protective caps at the ends of our chromosomes are eroding 15 to 20% slower in specific groups from East Asia. These groups hail from the regions of Honshu and the Korean Peninsula, as well as the basins of the Yangtze and Yellow Rivers. The highland regions of Tibet and Bhutan also show this incredible preservation, which confirms that this is a deep ancestral trait at play. The second major finding involved methylation age, which is a sophisticated marker that tracks chemical modifications on the DNA that accumulate over time. The data showed that East and Central Asian populations are consistently younger than their chronological age when compared to the global mean population. This signal was incredibly robust across multiple aging algorithms, including the original Horvath clock and the newer Grimmage and Fenage testing methods. It was not a statistical artifact because the reality of this youthful cellular state was verified across several distinct and different testing methods. The third major finding proved that mitochondrial function, which controls cellular energy, declines at very different rates depending on where your ancestors originated. Populations in East Asia and the Inner Asian regions showed significantly slower mitochondrial decline than any other group on the entire planet. Highland Tibetans and residents of the Mongolian steppe showed superior cellular energy maintenance that provides a direct shield against age-related diseases. This physical advantage explains why these people maintain cellular function far longer into their lives than the rest of the standard global population. The fourth major finding involved regulatory protein expression markers that were specifically developed by the team at the world-famous Karolinska Institute. East Asian populations maintain youthful expression patterns for these crucial proteins much longer than the global average during their chronological lifespans. Tibetan populations specifically showed regulatory profiles at age 60 that were nearly identical to the global mean profiles for individuals at age 45. This suggests that their deep genetic architecture produces a slower aging phenotype that creates measurable consequences across their entire body system. The fifth major finding tied everything together by identifying a set of specific regulatory variants that drive this slow aging phenotype across populations. These variants are located in genes that control cellular replication and mitochondrial maintenance, as well as the response to toxic oxidative damage. These variants were at their highest frequencies in a group that the consortium identified as a Northeast Asian ancient core lineage. This ancient line can be traced back through DNA evidence for at least 40,000 years into the deep interior of the Asian continent. This core lineage predates all the major Bronze Age migrations that reshaped the genetic map of Eurasia over the last several thousand years. The slow-aging variants are most prominent in modern populations that have retained the strongest signal of this ancient and resilient core. The consortium refused to highlight this in their public findings because stating it clearly would prove that the slow-aging phenotype is inherited. They chose to frame the results as complex environmental interactions because they knew the political consequences of the truth were just too high. The general audience was fed a watered-down version of the truth that suggested these variants were just interesting leads for future medical investigations. The media ignored the reality that the study had documented substantial inherited differences in the rate of biological aging across humanity. The reality is that the deep population history of East and Inner Asia created a regulatory architecture that is far more efficient than global standards. These populations are genuinely living longer and healthier lives because their biology has been configured for slower aging over tens of thousands. The famous longevity hotspots like Okinawa and the Highland Tibetans are not just lucky because of their diet or their local village lifestyle. They are individuals whose underlying biology has been hardwired for slower aging by deep ancestral genetic factors that the Academy hates to discuss. This finding links directly to the buried history of the vast interior of Asia that older maps referred to as the mysterious land of Tartaria. The deep continental interior was home to ancient populations whose biological inheritance has shaped the modern East Asian gene pool today. The textbook claim that these regions were just recently settled by people from elsewhere does not match the deep continuity of the genetic data. Something unique has been present in the heartland of Inner Asia for tens of thousands of years to drive this evolutionary change. The Tibetan case is the most famous example because they thrive at high altitudes thanks to an evolutionary adaptation known as the EPS1 variant. This variant was inherited from the Denisovan population, an archaic human group confirmed only in 2010 from a fragment of bone. The 2018 data suggests that the Denisovan contribution to the Tibetan people goes way beyond just the ability to survive in thin air. It appears they also contributed the slow-aging regulatory architecture that allows these populations to maintain youthful cellular health for so long. Mainstream media loves the high-altitude story because it fits perfectly into their acceptable narrative of standard evolutionary adaptation to a difficult environment. They completely ignore the slow aging data because it suggests that some populations are biologically superior in their core cellular maintenance systems. The Okinawan people of the Ryukyu Islands are world famous for having the highest concentration of centenarians that we have ever seen on this earth. The experts always claim it is just about green tea and a low-stress lifestyle, but the genetic data tells a different. When you filter the 2018 consortium data for the Okinawan samples, you see that these slow-aging variants are present at incredibly high frequencies. Their lifestyle does not work in a vacuum. It interacts with an underlying biology that is literally built to resist age-related decline. The Bama County population in southern China is another example of a region where the centenarian density is through the roof for reasons. While researchers talk about the clean mountain air and the local diet, the genetic data confirms they carry specific slow-aging variants. These people are genetically distinctive because they carry a deeper signal of older Inner Asian and Southeast Asian lineages than the surrounding Han population. Their biology is a biological inheritance layered with an environment that enables them to live to extreme, healthy ages routinely. The Hansa Valley in the Karakoram Mountains has been legendary for its long-lived, healthy population for over a century of recorded medical literature. Some modern critics try to debunk their age claims, but they cannot ignore the unique genetic signal present in their blood. The Hansa people carry the same ancestral components and the same elevated frequencies of slow-aging regulatory variants as the other longevity hotspots. Whether the individual age records are perfect or not, the underlying genetic potential for slow aging is clearly present in their genome. The interior regions of Mongolia are a massive puzzle to researchers who believe in the power of modern medicine and perfect dietary standards. The climate there is harsh, and the diet is heavy on animal fats, yet these people exhibit slow aging profiles consistently. By every standard measure of environment, these nomadic populations should be aging rapidly, but their biological reality shows the exact opposite result. The genetic inheritance is so strong that it overrides the environmental headwinds that should be breaking their bodies down much faster. The 2018 data proves that these people carry the slow-aging variants at some of the highest frequencies found in any modern human population. This is absolute proof that the regulatory machinery of their cells has been configured to last longer regardless of surface-level lifestyle factors. If you want to understand your own biological potential, you have to look past the mainstream narrative and into the deep history of ancestry. The data confirms that East and Central Asian populations are carrying a set of regulatory variants that produces measurably slower aging. The academic establishment has been very quiet about these findings because they realize that they cannot control the implications of this new research. The lead researchers have kept their heads down to protect their tenure, but the data is still sitting there for the world. The textbook version of human aging continues to push the same old lies about uniformity and the exclusive power of external environmental factors. The deeper truth remains buried in the supplementary materials, hidden from the general public, whose own biological story is being actively rewritten. The political and professional costs of stating these results clearly are so high that almost no one in the academic world dares to speak. They prefer to let the narrative of human equality stand, even if it contradicts the hard data produced by their machines. The aging process of the human body is simply not uniform across all the different groups of people living on this planet today. The deep populations of East and Central Asia possess a biological inheritance that gives them a massive head start in cellular health. This architecture is passed down from ancient lineages that have survived in the heartland of the continental interior for tens of thousands of years. The mainstream academy refuses to use the term Tartaria, but the genetic record clearly shows an ancient population continuity there. The data is there for anyone who is willing to look past the carefully managed press releases and the misleading executive summaries of papers. The conclusions are waiting for you to draw them, and they challenge every single assumption we have been taught in school. The populations whose biology has been configured for slow aging continue to thrive and live longer than the global mean in every single test. Whether the official narrative ever acknowledges these reasons or not, the biological reality of our species is changing right now. If this is the kind of high-stakes investigation you were looking for, you need to stay locked in to this channel for future updates. We are going to continue pulling back the curtain on the buried history of the human genome and the secrets of our ancestry. The aging genome is just the first chapter in a much larger story about how our history is encoded into our very blood. The buried biological inheritance of the East Asian populations is a topic we will be exploring in much greater detail very soon. The official record has spent generations trying to keep these doors shut, but the scientific data is starting to blow them wide open. We are going to keep tracking the evidence until the full, honest picture of human population history is finally laid bare. Think about what this means for the future of medicine and the way we understand our own limitations or our own immense potential. The genetic variants that control your aging clock are not just random mutations, they are the legacy of a resilient ancient human ancestry. We have been handed a simplified, managed version of history, but the molecular data does not lie to anyone who knows how to read. The reality of human biological diversity is far more fascinating and far more complex than the experts want us to believe. The next time you hear a scientist talk about the uniformity of the human experience, you will know exactly what the data actually says. You have the power to look past the institutional framing and understand the deep inherited biological truths that define our lives. The fight to get this research into the public sphere is just beginning, and the evidence is mounting with every new study that drops. We are witnessing a shift in the scientific landscape where the truth is becoming impossible to hide behind peer review walls. Keep watching as we piece together the fragmented evidence of our ancient past and the real biological differences that exist between us today. This is the most important story in modern science, and we are going to tell it regardless of the academic censorship. The geneticists who conducted this 2018 study did their work, but the story didn't end when they put their pens down in shame. The data is a living record of our history, and it is time that we started paying attention to what it says. The journey into our deep ancestry is far from over, and every bit of data brings us closer to a true human history. Thank you for listening to The Truth, and stay ready for the next deep dive into the secrets of the human genetic record.